Friend, enemy, or frenemy? How do Indians view the rise of China and its implications for India's rise? Join the conversation on this important topic by taking the China Challenge survey. The survey has been put together by researchers at the Takshashila Institution. Answer our 10 simple questions and let your voice be heard in shaping India's policy towards China. For more details, log on to www.takshashila.org.in or you can click on the link and take the survey in the show notes. Welcome to All Things Policy, a daily podcast by the Takshashila Institution. We are a bunch of policy nerds based in Bengaluru, and we like bringing fresh perspectives to Indian affairs and Indian perspectives to global affairs. So grab a cup of coffee, sit back, and join us for today's chat.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarthak and I welcome you to All Things Policy. The state of jobs in India has been a prominent topic in the news. In the last general elections, it was one of the key issues. The conversation around jobs, employment takes various forms. For instance, in the last few weeks, you might have noticed how there has been some sort of discussion around reservation for locals when it comes to jobs. This is something which I think Suman has also recorded a podcast on. Apart from that, a few months back, the International Labour Organization published a report, India Employment Report, and the focus of the report was on youth employment and skill development in the country. And in this episode, we are going to talk about all these things. In fact, we are going to discuss the report that was published a few months back. And to discuss this, I have with me my colleague Suman. Hi, Suman. Welcome to All Things Policy once again.
Hi, Sarthak. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining us once again. Joining me once again. So in this episode, we are going to discuss this report, and we are going to do this in a different manner, in a different format. So both of us have gone through the report, and there are certain points, findings we found interesting. So I have 5 points that I found interesting. Suman has some 5 points she found interesting. So we're going to discuss each of these points one by one. And some of these findings might be on the expected lines. Some of these things might be counterintuitive. So let's go ahead. So let's start with the discussion on the International Labour Organization India Employment Report. So first important point is about what has happened to the labor force participation rate, the workforce participation rate, the unemployment rate in India over the last 20 years or so, from 2000 onwards to 2019 and after that. The labor force participation rate, the workforce participation rate, the unemployment rate, they were deteriorating from 2000 to 2019, but they have shown some improvement after that. But what about the quality of work? Now, this is something that I found pretty interesting. In case of India, the type of employment that has been created, it is not necessarily good quality employment. In fact, employment generation has been dominated by poor quality employment. Mostly it is in the informal sector, mostly it is informal employment. On top of that, the wages and earnings have typically been stagnant. Now, some data points here. Formal employment in 2000s, it used to be around 8.5%. Basically, 92%, 92% of the jobs that India had back then used to be informal employment, which implies that people don't have any social security benefits. And this number has not changed drastically even in 2022. It was around 9.7%, right? So from 8.5% to 9.7%. So even now, almost 90% of people who are engaged in some sort of economic activity, they do not have any of those social security benefits. The next part is even more interesting. The salaries, the wages that people get, has the quantum of salary changed over a period of time. Now, this particular report, it classifies earnings into different categories. For instance, earnings by those who are self-employed, earnings by those who are in some form of casual employment, and earnings by those who have some sort of regular employment. Now, self-employment, it is something which is explanatory, right? It explains on its own. Regular employment refers to that kind of employment where there is some sort of tenure and the employees here, the workers over here, they get some salaries every month or every week. Casual employment is not that. It's very unstable. There is no such tenure. It can be a daily basis. You might get some income tomorrow, you might not get. So as expected, the regular employment, the monthly earnings tend to be the highest, then self-employment, then casual employment. But what is interesting is the average monthly earnings for the regular and self-employed category has declined in the last 10 years, while that for casual employment it has increased, but again it has not been a drastic increase. So this is a major cause of concern, that those who have regular employment or those who are self-employed, their earnings have declined over a period of time. And what could be the reason for this? Maybe the kind of jobs that we're creating, it's not up to the mark. Maybe poor quality of jobs, which implies that the average wages have actually gone down for these kind of uh, job categories. And again, as large section of the population is involved, is working in the informal sector, this is also a cause of concern, right? If you have something like a pandemic,
Job security comes.
yeah, there's no job security, nothing, right? You are losing out jobs, you are losing out, your wages are declining massively. There's no protection. So the quality of work, I think, is a major concern, and this is something which is highlighted in the report. Suman?
Yeah, sure. Before we go into this, I think if you look at the numbers, it shows a little bit of a dip in the unemployment rate. Okay, now that might actually be, you might feel happy about it, but there is also another thing to it. It could be because there are more people in youth employment, more people in education. Okay, but the other cause is maybe people have dropped out of labor force entirely, right? So we have to look at that number a little more carefully to understand what is going on with that. Okay. Then the other thing that struck me while reading this was there is an increase in employment in agriculture. Okay. Now, when we are tracking economic trajectories of countries, we normally always see that there is a transition from agriculture to construction, manufacturing, and then to services. Between 2000 and 2018, we saw some of that, 2018-19, we saw some of that movement happening. Very little, but still was happening. But now we've seen that we are going back. I mean, those gains have been like kind of reversed. There has been a substantial growth in employment in agriculture post 2019. Now, this can be again because there is a pandemic factor that comes into play. So, we could attribute this to individuals returning to subsistence activities because the pandemic, you lost so many. Again, connecting back to your point on informal employment, they just lacked work opportunities, and so they went back to agriculture. So that is one other point that I saw. And again, within this, you will see that women in agriculture has increased, and women, unpaid work and all that could have come down a little, but women in agriculture has definitely increased. Okay, that is again one point that I thought was alarming or interesting to actually watch out for.
Yeah. So the second point that I have from my end, and this is something which is connected to what you talked about, right? That people have possibly moved to agriculture sector, and the contribution of agriculture to
The economy.
employment has increased. Now, as you mentioned, that there was this slow transition that was going on. There was this structural transition. People were gradually moving to manufacturing, right? They were moving out of farm jobs to non-farm jobs, right? So manufacturing services, that transition was happening, which might have been restricted in recent times. Now, I just want to talk about what has happened in the manufacturing sector, and what has possibly happened in the service sector, right? What does the report point out to? Now, when it comes to manufacturing, the employment in manufacturing sector over a period of time has expanded, but the rate of expansion has not been huge. While the value addition from the manufacturing sector has been substantially larger as compared to the employment growth. For instance, the employment growth between 2000 to 2019 was somewhere around 1.7% per year. But the gross value added in this sector during this period was around 7.5%. So the number of jobs that you are creating, that has not increased much, but there was more value addition, right? The sector is growing, but they are not able to create enough jobs, which implies that, or in other words, right, economists will use the term employment elasticity. So employment elasticity in the manufacturing sector has been low. Now, what could be the possible reason for this? Most likely, the way the transition has happened in the manufacturing sector, it has been capital intensive rather than being labor intensive. And one of the possible reasons why this has been capital intensive, why the sector has used technology more instead of labor, is because of the kind of labor laws that we have had. And whatever be the case, right, still there was some sort of expansion in the jobs that were being created here. So it was fine. But as you pointed out, that is also not happening. There is this reversal of this slow and steady structural transformation that was happening. And people are moving to agriculture. Now, I just want to also mention one more thing. What about services? Right? In the last 20 years or so, the role of services has been immense when it comes to the economy, massive contribution, especially when it comes to jobs. The number of jobs they have created is not enough. It is quite low actually. But the kind of jobs that services has created, that is something which is interesting. All the high paid, regular, formal jobs, those kind of jobs services sector have created. So again, one of the way for upward mobility, but the number of quantum of jobs tends to be low in the service sector. And again, because of the employment intensity of the different sub-sectors within services. And what is a cause of concern which has been identified by this ILO report is the employment intensity among the different sub-sectors in services has declined over time. Right, so the number of jobs that the service sector was creating was anyway low, and over a period of time, the number of jobs per capita or per unit economic growth is declining further, which can be a major cause of concern.
Yeah, I think why is this happening is also where we come to the next point that we're talking about. So yeah, the production process has become increasingly become more capital intensive rather than labor intensive. That's the point that you have already touched upon. Again, we look at digitization, introduction of new technologies, etc. They are changing again the structure of employment by itself. Okay, so the gig and the platform work that we are talking about, all of those new kinds of work that are coming in, although they are, I mean, how new are they? They have always been there, but being mediated by a platform, by algorithms, all of that, that is something new. So this thing has been expanding, but it is to a large extent in the informal work, okay, with hardly any sense, social security provisions or anything. That is again one cause of it. So while you have people, while you have other avenues of employment that are opening up, the nature of employment, like you mentioned, the quality of employment still has not been very, very, very good. Right? So that is the third thing I had.
Yeah, so the economic growth in India that has typically happened, again, any form of economic growth can be a product of two things, right? It is the number of people who are contributing to the economic growth, who are possibly working, multiplied by what is the productivity, right? So productivity is a result of factors such as what kind of technology you have, or how you are putting the things together, the resources together, entrepreneurship, and all those things. So what we are saying is employment has been less of a factor here, or the number of people who are engaged in economic activity contributing to economic growth has been less of a factor. The larger factor here has been the technological progress, or the productivity gains because of how you bring different resources together or how you are using technology. So that has been the major contributor, not the number of people who are working in the economy.
Sure. Yeah. Then moving to one other part of it, which is obviously gender. What is how many women are employed, etc. So typically, you will see a U-shaped curve in economies that are transitioning to a more advanced economy kind of thing. So we saw a dip in labor force participation of women till 2018 or 19, which was a cause of concern. Now we see a slight uptick in female labor force participation rate, but again, that labor force participation rate is in unpaid. I mean, I don't know if you should put the unpaid work into this, but yeah, there is care work, there is agriculture, and there are. It's a very low equilibrium kind of thing. So we still have big problem in terms of female labor force participation rate for the country itself.
Yeah, and in fact, in this, the report also identifies why women don't take up jobs, or even if they're educated, why they are not taking up jobs. And it finds out that the most prominent reason for women not taking up jobs, there are two major reasons. One is many a times they have to take up these household responsibilities or childcare responsibilities, and there's another reason that the husbands or the families, they would prefer them not to take up any job there, to stay inside their homes.
Yeah, I think as economic, as money within the family increases, uh, women drop out before they actually again begin to start working outside, right? And also women, I mean, they identified more in the self-employment sector or such. So, and those jobs, like we have already discussed, are low pay, low social security, everything, all of that we have already discussed.
Yeah. That was about gender. There's another interesting dimension, the regional dimensions. Which regions in the economy are the ones which are creating more jobs? Which regions in the economy have that demographic bulge or demographic dividend? So what we'll do is we'll discuss some of these things about the regional implications of the report, from the report. So this report identifies certain regions where most of the regular formal and organized sector jobs are concentrated, and obviously the places where these are not concentrated. In the eastern part of India and the central part of India, these regular formal organized sector employment is not concentrated. And what is interesting is, from these regions, the state of UP, Bihar, Jharkhand, Chhattisgarh, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, these are the states which have the largest share of people in the younger age category, 15 to 29 years. And again, this is going to increase over a period of time. So east and central part of India, they have large section of young population, but they are also the ones which do not have these regular jobs. On the other hand, the southern states, they are the ones, they have a smaller proportion of people who are in the young age category, and this proportion is also going to decline over time, but they are the ones who are creating these jobs. So this is going to be a major cause of concern, maybe, in the sense that the North Indian states, right, or North Indian, or the not North Indian, the East Central region states, these are the states, they have a lot of young people, but they haven't invested sufficiently in building human capital. The number of opportunities, job opportunities, economic opportunities is low in these areas, while the opportunities lie somewhere else, right? So this indirectly hints, or indirectly implies that there is going to be more migration, maybe from the eastern and central parts of India to the southern parts of India. And again, this has massive implications for public finance and all these things, right? How do you ensure that labor can move from one place to another, people, human capital can move from one place to another, and again, human capital will move to places where you have more opportunities, or you have to create opportunities where human capital exists, which has not been the case till now. We have to see how the Indian state manages this.
Yeah.
And as I was mentioning some time back, we have had different kinds of cultural tensions in the past. There have been demand for reservation of jobs for locals, and also there are different kinds of barriers being established when it comes to movement of people between states. So we have to see how this pans out.
Yeah, the political economy around this is going to be very interesting, and will I mean, I'm sure there'll be rough news around this. Right? While you are talking about regional employment, the topic is again the demographic dividend that India is poised to take advantage of, etc. right? So while we're talking of this, it becomes important for us to talk about youth employment specifically. Now, we see that 27% of the total population is in this youth population. Okay, so when we talk about youth, there is 15 to 29 age group, which is actually the youth, and then there's the working age, which is 29 to 59. Now, the youth population is currently at 27%, and this is expected to decline because our fertility rates are overall declining, is expected to decline to 23% by 2036. Okay, so we are adding about 7 to 8 million people into the labor force. We have to make enough jobs, just the, if just to give them enough jobs. We can't take this very lightly, right? Because this number is kind of daunting as such. So again, when we're talking about this itself, we're talking about the unemployment rate among youths is like 6 times greater than the ones, than anybody else, than people with higher education. All of that happens. So again, in that, educated females are experiencing higher level of unemployment compared with educated male youths. Now, we discussed why that is so some time back. So, but again, the focus has to be, the focus has to come back to youth employment and see what we can do. The reason, of course, 15 to 29, if people are dropping out of the workforce between 15 to 29, one reason is education. Of course, there are more people getting enrolled in higher education. There's no, we can't deny that. Okay, but there is also all the other reasons that we spoke about, which is cause of worry for anybody who's looking at this space, because what will we do with this many young people if they do not have enough productive employment for themselves? That is one part. And then there is also this factor of educated versus uneducated. What is the what is the level of unemployment there? So in this report says that the unemployment rate amongst youths was 6 times greater than among persons with secondary or higher level education. And then it was unemployment among graduates is higher than people who cannot read and write. Now, that is an alarming situation, which speaks about the quality of education, maybe the quality of employment, and all those other related factors. We're also talking about educated female youths experience higher levels of unemployment compared to educated male youths. So again, we have a gender dimension over there, which is a worrying factor there. So youth employment has to come back into focus. I'm sure there are efforts being made to increase that, but it's just not enough, and we seem to need something a little more, a bigger push towards that.
Yeah, thanks, Suman. The next interesting point that I found was regarding the aspirations of youth when it comes to jobs, what sort of jobs they want, and also what is the usual waiting time for them to get a job. Now, the report finds out that, it conducts certain surveys. It conducts survey in Delhi, Ranchi, and some places, and it finds out that the average waiting time for the first job is more than a year. Just imagine, like, waiting for 1 year to get a job. So again, it reflects that maybe you don't have enough jobs in the market, or there is some issues with the ability to match skills with the jobs. Now, when it comes to aspirations, it also showed something which was very interesting. There is usually a preference for white collar jobs. Again, something which will be there in most places. But in case of India, there is a preference for not just any white collar job, but there is a preference for government jobs, jobs in the banking sector, armed forces, railways, police. And for women, the preference was for teaching and banking jobs. For men, it was mostly technical jobs. Another thing, and this is something that you will also come across in news reports, in case of India, people are having higher qualifications, but they still opt for jobs which require low skills. And these jobs might, most likely the jobs which are low skilled in the public sector. And this was quite high. The preference for blue collar public sector jobs requiring not much skills, but the people who are opting for it might be having graduate degree, postgraduate degree. Sometimes they might have a technical training, they might have a diploma. So this proportion was high in 2005. Now also it tends to be high. Now also you'll find those who are having a graduate degree, but they are still opting for a low skill job, most likely in a government. Maybe the employer here is the government. And many a times you'll come across these kind of news reports where grade D job opening is there in the government, and PhDs have also applied for it, and not just one PhD, some hundreds of PhDs would have applied for it. So this report talks about that, and it says that okay, this is something which has been happening for a while. So it again leads to different kinds of questions, right? Whether we don't have jobs which requires the skills that these people have, or they have just had some sort of formal training, but this training is of no use, and as a result of which they're not getting employed, and as a result of which they're looking for these kind of jobs. Also, maybe there is some sort of social status associated with government jobs. So despite you being eligible for something else, higher quality job, maybe you are opting for a blue collar public sector job. Also, the report finds out that women opt out of employment due to various reasons, and the most prominent being managing family, managing the child, or the husbands or the families not letting them to participate in the labor market. So these are some of the interesting findings with respect to the waiting time to get a job. 80% of people wait for at least a year to get a job, and then aspiration is preferably public sector jobs, government jobs. So, what is the next interesting point for you?
I don't know if it's interesting or we're making it all gloom and doom, but it is, the report is what it is, right? We're just picking out things that are important. The thing about jobs is, I mean, a closely associated thing with jobs is a skill, right? So what do we mean by, I mean, there are some perceptions regarding skilling. Now, people in India mostly prefer a graduate degree. Okay, not many people opt for skill specific jobs like welders or technicians or anything like that. Okay, so we see that playing out in some way. The returns from training about the skilling are not uh, adequately remunerated in the labor market. Okay, making this very socially economically less attractive. So in most other places, you will see that people will opt for jobs that match their skills, or if they have a skill in a particular, say, welding or whatever else that we talk about. But here, because the jobs are so far and few in between, people take whatever they get. And there is this social thing about everybody getting a BA, or even if it is not relevant to your job, everybody seems keen to get this. And that signaling effect in the market on this is also seems to be a factor on playing out on this. So again, the policy imperative for this is, how do we change our, or how do we reform our education system to match the job market, or uh, how do we just bring the overall levels of education just higher?
In fact, just I want to add something to this point. As the education level increases, right? For instance, there might be graduates, there might be people who have some sort of technical qualification. Those who have technical qualification in India, or maybe they have some diploma, among them, the unemployment rate tends to be higher than those who are general graduates. So, the question that you were asking related to education possibly lies here somewhere, right? Maybe the kind of skills that the labor market requires and the training that you're providing, there is not much
Yes,
of an
correct.
alignment, or maybe placement support, those kind of things are missing somewhere, or there is a mismatch between whatever skills that you have acquired and whatever opportunities are there.
Sure. Yeah. The skills is a big factor in this whole thing.
Yeah. I have one more final point that I found in this particular report. What this report has done is it has also created one sort of indice, and with the help of which it is measuring the employment conditions state wise, different states, how do they perform when it comes to employment conditions. And it has various factors, and they take multiple factors together and they create some sort of composite indicator. So basically it tells you whether a state is creating better conditions so that jobs can be created. And the score of all the states over a period of time has improved. That means all states are in a better situation right now for creating jobs as compared to maybe 10 years back. That's what they say. And it is interesting to find that states like Gujarat, Telangana, Himachal, Uttarakhand, they are the ones who are at the forefront when it comes to this employment condition index. So they are the ones who are doing well. And the cause of concern is Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Jharkhand, Odisha. They are the ones whose score is the lowest. What I found interesting is, again, this is something which I thought is counterintuitive. Karnataka's score is not good. And in fact, Karnataka's relative ranking has gone down. It used to be the 8th state in the last two rounds, and now it has become 14th. So,
In the quality of employment.
yeah, I mean, I was assuming that Karnataka or Bangalore especially creates jobs. I see people from around the country coming to Bangalore for jobs, but maybe the overall situation is not good.
Yeah. So that's all I had from the report. So if you have other things that you would like to speak about.
No, I don't. I mean, these are some of the major findings that I had. But again, the key point remains India has not been able to create good quality jobs. We have not been able to create enough jobs. The structural transformation that we were witnessing, again, maybe that is not happening. The number of jobs increasing in agricultural sector is not a good thing. Already, more than 50% of the population is engaged in agriculture, but the contribution of agriculture is quite low, which implies that per capita income, productivity in agriculture, everything is low. So we have to ensure that more number of jobs are created in non-farm sector. That means manufacturing services. There has to be a gradual transition from uh, agriculture to manufacturing services. And also the fascination that you have for public sector jobs, government jobs, we need to think about it, because government cannot create um,
Definitely.
enough jobs for everyone in the economy. And also, it is not the role of the government to create jobs, right? It is the private sector which has to create jobs. So maybe the fascination of the government jobs is because we are not able to create enough jobs in the economy.
The role of the government is just to create, enable good working or good conditions for job creation, right? So
Exactly.
rule of law.
Right. So how the markets can function, compete, create more economic opportunities, in the process create more jobs.
True. Yeah. So let's see. I mean, the budget recently had some proposals for jobs itself, but we don't know where that will go. But yeah, this will remain an important topic for discussion in policy circles, in politics, everywhere that we will be looking at. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on this, and we hope the listeners have got some idea about the state of employment in India, and will also, watch this space.
Thanks, Suman. Thanks to the audience for tuning in.
Thanks. Bye.
If you liked our show, dive into Takshashila's research on technology, strategy, and economic affairs. Check us out at our Twitter handle at Takshashila INST or our website takshashila.org.in.